This is the Sports Bash Warm-Up with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN. Now, live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Josh Hennig.
Their rotation is not the greatest to begin with, but if you take one or both of those guys at the top of the rotation out, and you're going to see more of the Vince Velasquez's and Nick Pavettas that we've seen way too much of already. The offense is going to really have to carry them, in late July into August.
That was Tom Moore yesterday on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Phillies schedule is out. It's live right now at 97.3 ESPN.com as baseball and the Phillies attempt to return to action. We know that one of the issues that has to be worked around is who's available and who's not. And with Zach Wheeler's wife giving birth this month, Aaron Nola coming in a little late because he was in quarantine due to the protocols. He did not test positive. That's something that the Phillies have emphasized and re-emphasized multiple times yesterday and today. But the concern with Nola is how ready he will be when things come around. This was Tom Moore also on Aaron Nola yesterday on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill and Hunter Brody.
Nola was around somebody he wouldn't say if it was a teammate, if it was a team, somebody who worked for the team, which is why he had to be away for 7 days, which is the rules. He never tested positive, so he was allowed back, and now he threw a bullpen today. Girardi said that he really liked what he saw. It was a little interesting, though. Nola said, I'm good to go. I'm ready for the opener, and Girardi kind of was like, not so fast. I want to see more of him.
So we'll get into all about the Phillies as well. Sixers are going to ship down to Orlando in the next, I think it's a Wednesday or Thursday they're heading down. I know the Orlando Magic have already made their way into the bubble environment. So sports are coming around. We got to talk about it here on the warm-up. Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. To get on the conversation. And I wanted to touch on this stuff with the Phillies rotation because what Tom Moore just said there, we cannot, and I mean cannot, amplify enough. The Philadelphia Phillies, if you remove Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler from that rotation, you're in a lot of trouble, folks. A lot of trouble. And I can't emphasize this enough, that when it comes to the Phillies, this 60-game run is going to all come down to, can you have your best players available when you absolutely, positively need them most? You cannot overlook the fact that the Phillies are a team that, when you look at that 60-game schedule, again, go to 97.3ESPN.com to check it out. The Phillies schedule is something that screams one thing to me specifically. And you look at the number of games they have versus certain teams. Yeah, it's not 100% evened out schedule. But it's a schedule where you are getting the same amount of games versus the NL East teams. But the AL East teams are a little different. You have 4 games versus the Yankees, 3 games versus the Orioles, 4 versus the Red Sox, 3 versus the Rays, and then 6 versus the Blue Jays. To me, the big key to this schedule is how do the Phillies handle the non-NL East games? Because we all realize that the Marlins are a miserable baseball team. But we also realize that a team like the Nationals will be without a Ryan Zimmerman. They will be without their catcher, Castillo. You look at the Braves, they're going to be without a Nick Markakis. Who knows when and if Freddie Freeman is going to get 100% better and come back. So for the Phillies, in order for you to have success, You absolutely, positively have to get this team off and running with your best players at the right time. And whatever version that is, whatever situation that is, whether it's Nola doesn't start maybe the first game of the season, whether it's Zach Wheeler isn't available for a few weeks to start the year, whatever the scenario is, you got to realize that if you don't take advantage of the games that are going to be opportunities for you to win, this Phillies season is just going to be a complete and utter and total waste. You got to play 6 games versus the Blue Jays. You know, if the Blue Jays play up to expectation and they stay healthy, that's a dangerous team with all those young stars like Guerrero and Biggio and a pitching staff that does have potential on the mound as well. You got to play a lot of games against the Blue Jays. The Braves are going to be a little shorthanded. The Nationals are going to be a little shorthanded. What kind of version of the Mets are we going to get? They always make these big moves, but are we going to get the best of the Mets, or are we going to get, the train wreck Mets? We don't know. So to me, the Phillies' success in this 60-game season comes down to if Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler are fully available and how many games they actually pitch. We talked yesterday and on Saturday. I talked with Frank Close about this on Saturday. Check out the interview on the 97.3 ESPN YouTube channel. You know, we always talk about what about Arrieta? What version of Arrieta we get? Well, if Arrieta goes out there and has a good 10 to 12 starts, that puts you in a good position. If Nola pitches at least 9 to 10 starts, if Wheeler pitches at least 9 to 10 starts, and those 10 starts are good quality starts for the most part, let's say if you can get Wheeler, Nola, and Arrieta to all go about 7-3 in their starts, that means half of your games, half of them, that 30, you won 21 out of those 30 games. So if you can get quality pitching from your top 3 guys, it puts less pressure on the rest of the team. But as Tom Moore said, if Nola isn't 100% ready, if Wheeler is not available to be out there, this is a weak rotation, and now you're asking an offense to go out there and basically be the modern-day version of, one of the better offenses in sports history. You're asking them to be a modern-day version of the Big Red Machine or a modern-day version of what the Phillies were years ago with, Howard and Utley and Rollins and all those guys. You're asking this team to maybe do something I don't know if they're constructed for. Text board is open 609-403-0973. And I'm not saying this to be negative. I'm saying this to be realistic. When I look at the Phillies and I look at their roster, I'm not 100% sure that if this team is built to be an offensive juggernaut, outside of Harper and Realmuto, there's a lot of questions about this team up and down the lineup. When you think about the Phillies team, you're talking about a team that I'm not fully sure what Hoskins is going to look like this year. There's all this promise about him being a power hitter, but all right, is he going to get the batting average up? Is he going to bash enough homers and RBIs to show the progress in his ability to be a winner? Jay Bruce, we are anticipating him to play a good amount of DH. How does he look in his next year in a Phillies uniform? I'm not 100% sold on if Scott Kingery is going to be ready to start the year because he's unavailable right now. So how long does it take him to get up and going, and who fills in for him? Is it Logan Forsythe? I mean, that guy is an okay hitter. Josh Harrison is a streaky hitter. Neil Walker is a streaky guy as well. Gene Segura is going to play third base. But traditionally, he's not a power slugger. He's a guy who hits for average. Didi Gregorius coming off of an injury. He's had some good years in New York, but coming off that injury last year, it didn't play so well. Do we get a better version of Didi this year? Andrew McCutchen's coming off an injury. How long does it take him to get up and rolling? Roman Quinn, when he's healthy, he's a dynamic player, but does he stay healthy? So, to me, outside of Harper and Realmuto, I don't have a ton of confidence in a Phillies team to hit their way to overcome their pitching night in and night out. So, to me, that's why this starting pitching staff is going to be the key to their success. If the Phillies pitching staff can have success, if they can go out there and pitch well and play well, then that's how they're going to be able to get a winning record out of the 60-game season. As I said, if you can get 10 starts out of Nola, Wheeler, and Arrieta, and you can get all of them to go 7-3, and I'm just throwing in a scenario, that guarantees that half of your games you win 21-9. So now there's less pressure on the rest of the pitching staff, whoever that is, to go out there and be excellent. Because like I said, I don't have a ton of confidence that this hitting lineup, this batting order, is going to go out there and just put up big-time numbers. I have confidence in two guys specifically, Harper and Realmuto. They both have a track record. We know exactly what we're getting from those guys. I don't know what I'm getting from Rhys Hoskins. I don't know when Andrew McCutchen is going to be healthy. I don't know if Roman Quinn is going to be healthy. I don't know what Adam Hazley looks like in his second year on the ball club. I don't know what version of Didi Gregorius we're going to get. Gene Segura, we know he's an on-base guy. He's a guy who usually hits for average, but he's not exactly a RBI machine. Scott Kingery, will he be ready for opening day? I got a lot of questions about this Phillies team. And speaking of the pitching staff, you're looking at your 4 and 5 starters, some combination of Eflin, Pivetta, Velasquez, Ranger Suarez, and Spencer Howard? Really? This was Tom Moore yesterday when Hunter asked him about the possibility that, listen, you could have a situation where you have starters go for a certain amount of innings and then somebody come in the bullpen and take over.
Guys maybe on a 60 pitch count to start the season, and whoever starts and goes 3 or 4 innings, and then you could have the Pavettas, the Cole Irvins, maybe even the Spencer Howards of the world, kind of piggybacking there to eat up some innings, to get have those two guys get through 6 or 7 innings like kind of a normal starter would.
So if you think about it, yeah, you could have Spencer Howard maybe start a game. But if he goes, let's say, 3 innings, and then Vince Velasquez goes 3 innings, that's still a roll of the dice. You're still hoping that the pitching staff can put it together. And that's why I'm saying I'm not going to sit here and act like this Phillies team is automatically a playoff team, because when you have the schedule that they have, there's a lot of questions about what you're going to get from the hitters, what you're going to get from the pitchers. And I understand there's a lot of questions for a lot of teams. But like I said, outside of Harper and Realmuto, I don't have a ton of confidence that this batting lineup is going to go out there and bash their way to winning games. So you're going to need the pitching to step up. And if Arrieta and Nola and Wheeler don't give you at least 10 really good starts, this could be a very miserable baseball season if they get it off the ground. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. Reminder, coming up at 1:25, we'll go out to Yaz Island. John Morgan, MMA Junkie USA Today reporter, he's out there on Fight Island. He'll talk about the protocols, because we've been talking about the protocols for a lot of sports in the COVID-19 era. Well, what they're doing out there on Yaz Island is a whole nother level of procedures and precautions and what they're going through, and the fact that UFC 251 is a different main event now. It's Usman versus Masvidal, no longer Usman versus Burns. And John Morgan was one of the guys to break the news about the change that happened over the weekend. So we'll get into all of that with John coming up at 1:25 here on 97.3 ESPN. But back to the Phillies. I'm seriously looking at this Phillies team, and I'm curious to know how many wins we can actually get out of this team. In a 60-game schedule, if you're getting the best you can from everybody involved, I mean, what is that though? I don't think this Phillies team is a 40-20 team. I don't feel like I can go out there and say that the Phillies are going to go out there and win 40 games. So how many games are they going to win? Is it a 35-25 team? I know the over-under set for the Phillies was around 31.5. Well, what you're basically saying is the odds makers are telling you the Phillies are about a 500 baseball team. So maybe 35-25 is an attainable number. Do we actually believe that's enough to get them into the playoffs? I don't know. Because when you look at the NL East, we always know the Braves are a very good team, but no Nick Markakis is a loss. We don't know when Freddie Freeman is going to come back, if he comes back from his COVID-19 situation. We know the Nationals are without a couple of guys, or catcher Castillo, no Ryan Zimmerman. We know that Strasburg has had questions in the past about staying healthy. So we assume that the Nats and the Braves are going to be competition, but we don't know what version of those teams you're getting. If everyone stays healthy and everything, quote unquote, goes as planned, the Phillies have to overcome, in my opinion, 4 situations. They got to overcome the games they play the Braves. They got to have a winning record against the Braves and the Nationals. Number 2, they have to figure out what version of the Mets you're going to get, because the Mets always seem to make these upgrades, but we never know if the Mets are actually going to show up or not. Listen, we know they have some good pitchers, but is the lineup going to show up? I think the Mets are a very Jekyll and Hyde kind of team for the Phillies. And as I mentioned earlier, you got 4 games against the Yankees, 4 games against the Red Sox, and 6 games against the Blue Jays. So 2 separate questions. Can you walk out of the Yankees and Red Sox games with a winning record? And what version of the Blue Jays going to get? Because the Blue Jays have a ton of young talent that has a crazy amount more potential than even the Phillies do. If the Blue Jays play up to their potential, that could be an incredibly difficult thing to overcome. So I'm very curious to see what exactly we are going to get out of this team. What version are we going to get from this Phillies team? And as far as I'm concerned, if Arrieta and Nola and Wheeler can give you 10 good starts, you have a chance. Because I don't have a lot of faith in this batting lineup to bash their way to a win. And when you look at the other teams in Philadelphia that are going to be turning around the same time, the Flyers return later this month, Sixers return later this month. Those teams are already going to the playoffs. We don't have to worry about, the what ifs when some of this stuff, because their seasons have already played out. We know that when the Sixers come back, they have 8 games to change their place in the standings and then map out their playoff destiny. The Flyers at worst are going to get the number 4 seed in the playoffs. They get a potential to move up as well. And to me, as long as they can avoid the Penguins, they have a chance to make a Stanley Cup run. So we know what we're getting with the Sixers and the Flyers potentially when they return. The Phillies is a total, absolute unknown. And the unknown has to do with not just the COVID-19 stuff, but with the fact that I don't know what version of this team we're getting, because we're in summer camp now and we don't have a traditional spring training warm-up to observe these guys and figure it out. Yeah, they're going to have 3 scrimmage games, but usually with spring training, you have almost an entire month of a time and opportunity to look at this team and say, all right, I saw Rhys Hoskins do this. I saw Segura do that. I saw Kingery do this. This is completely different. And if you're going to go out there and tell me that you have a ton of faith in this Phillies batting lineup, please tell me why. It's 609-403-0973. I know certainly for me, I don't have a ton of confidence in this Phillies lineup. I think this Phillies lineup has way more questions than answers on it. To me, there's 2 guys who I know, and the rest of the 7 hitters, I shrug my shoulders because I certainly have no idea what I'm getting. And while I like the idea of the Phillies not overworking Spencer Howard and maybe bringing in Vince Velasquez out of the bullpen, and maybe all the pitchers only go 4 or 5 innings, and then you have a quote-unquote starter in the bullpen to pick up the 2-3 innings on the back end to bridge you to the rest of the bullpen. But even then, what happens? We know how inconsistent Velasquez is. We know how inconsistent Pivetta is. You know, Ranger Suarez is on the COVID list, right? Well, he doesn't actually. We don't know if he actually has COVID, but he's not available to work out right now. Okay. So will he even be ready to start the year? I think this Phillies team has potential to be a playoff team, but I don't know if that potential ever will be seen. Because this team may never, ever, ever play up to its potential. Because summer camp means that you don't have a traditional spring training. You don't have a traditional way of getting ready for the year. And there's a lot of what ifs with this team. And it's not like that schedule is very forgiving. 60 games is all you get. You're done. You get 60 games, and it's not like a long baseball season where you say, well, you had a slump in June and you can figure it out in July and August. Absolutely not. You can't figure it out later in the year. You don't have an extra 100 games to figure this out after the first 62. No, it's 60 and you're done. It's put up or shut up time. And if you don't put up, then you are DOA on the baseball season. You know, if a guy like Gregorius struggles for the first 20 games, you're almost wasting at bats at this point. What if McCutchen doesn't come back 100%? What if he's not really fully back, but he's medically cleared to play, and he's just physically not where he was as a hitter before? Then what happens? What if Roman Quinn gets hurt for the 200th time? Well, where does that leave you with the depth behind Hazley and the other outfielders? Jay Bruce, he's a streaky hitter too. When he's hot, he's a monster as a hitter. When he's not hot, it's a lot of strikeouts. We'll get the text board in just a bit, 609-403-0973 to get on the conversation. Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN. I want to remind you that the Seize the Deal opportunity is still live right now for you with the Rife Bar and Restaurant in Atlantic City. We only have a few of these left. Only a few left. So if you haven't gotten your hands on the $25 voucher for just $12.50, don't wait. Get your hands on it. There's only a few left with this Seize the Deal opportunity at seizethedeal.com or go to the 97.3 ESPN app to get your hands on this Rife Bar and Restaurant $25 voucher for just $12.50. Let me tell you something. We had the food delivered to us. These mahi tacos, hangover burgers, these wings. This food is absolutely incredible. We only have a few left. Go right now to the 97.3 ESPN app to get your hands on the Rife Bar and Restaurant in Atlantic City. Instant voucher, a $25 voucher for just $12.50. Don't miss out. There's only a few left. Go right now. Rife Bar and Restaurant in Atlantic City, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We'll talk some UFC 251. What is Fight Island like? With John Morgan, USA Today's MMA Junkie reporter, right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Josh Hennig back here on 97.3 ESPN. We'll get to your text in just a bit at 609-403-0973. But now joining us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline live from UFC Fight Island. That's right. John Morgan, he made his way over there. Follow him on Twitter at MMA Junkie John. MMA Junkie, lead staff reporter, USA Today, joins us now. Again, live from Fight Island. John, I appreciate you jumping on because I know the time zones have been absolutely crazy. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good, man. Yeah, I'm still trying to get my sleep adjusted because it's weird. You know, we're halfway around the world, and we got an 11-hour time difference for my home in Las Vegas. But you know, these fights are going to take place in prime time back in the States, so they'll start at like 2 a.m. in the morning on Sunday morning. So it's kind of weird to figure out when to sleep, when to stay up, and how to make it all work.
So before we get to the details of like the whole process, you know, again, I encourage people to go check out your ongoing blog about your firsthand account over there, over on the website. But before we get to that, we got to get to the news that like basically hit us like a whirlwind over the weekend. You were one of the first people to report about it. Burns out. And then over the weekend, somehow we finally got the fight that everybody wanted, which was Usman versus Masvidal. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. How did we go from, John, where Masvidal said, I don't like my contract, the UFC isn't negotiating, wanting to pay me, blah, 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 and now all of a sudden, I love my contract, I got a multi-fight deal.
Well, it's funny, man. Jorge Masvidal, it looks like he played his hands right. This is the fight that we wanted to see, as you mentioned. Jorge Masvidal, Kamaru Usman for the welterweight title. But the money that they were offering, he said he just wasn't comfortable with. So he held out. And Gilbert Burns stepped up and said, look, it's not enough money for you. It's enough money for me. But right now, like the whole sporting world, obviously COVID-19 is a big, big deal. And unfortunately, in a pre-screen before he got on the plane to fly to Fight Island, he tested positive. So they had to pull Gilbert Burns out. At that time, all the power went back to Jorge Masvidal. Now the UFC wants this big fight. They want to save the card. They want to have a big blockbuster in the main event. So they call Jorge up and they say, let's talk again. How about we reopen those contract negotiations? And he said, look, Jorge ended up saying, look, I didn't get exactly what I wanted, but I got pretty dang close, and I'm ready to put on a show and try to win the welterweight title.
Now, we know that Masvidal says that he's been staying in shape and staying training, but what can we really expect from a Masvidal-Usman fight, especially considering that no matter what Masvidal has to say, he basically is taking this fight on 6 days' notice for all intents and purposes?
Yeah, I don't want to take away from Masvidal at all. I mean, he's a veteran of the sport, 50 to his name. And, there's the reason they call him Game Bread. There's a reason he won the BMF title. He is that guy. He will fight anybody, anywhere, anytime. But there is a big difference between training, which he's always training. He's absolutely always training. But there's a difference between that and training for a 5-round championship fight, especially against a guy like Kamaru Usman, who is going to be pushing the pace, who's going to be looking to grind, who's going to be looking to wrestle. So it's going to be tough. So, listen, I don't want to take away anything from Masvidal's chances. That's the great thing about the sport is anybody can win, but you got to think he's going to be most dangerous early on. You got to think that's when he's going to be trying to get things done, because I've got to think even in the back of his head, he's not sure he can go full speed for 25 minutes.
We know how important it is for the UFC to put out the best product they can, because without fans, without that gate revenue, you need the biggest punch from that pay-per-view. So how important was it to keep all 3 of those championship fights on this pay-per-view main event?
I think it was really huge. And to be honest, no disrespect to Gilbert Burns, because stylistically, I think Gilbert Burns presents a lot of problems for Kamaru Usman, and I hope that Gilbert Burns heals up quickly and is able to get this title fight, because it's more, to me, stylistically, it's almost a more intriguing fight. That said, there's no question Masvidal is one of the biggest stars in the sport right now, and he's instantly the biggest star on this card. So not only did you keep 3 title fights on there, but in arguably you upgraded the card. You brought in a bigger name. So you're right. I think this pay-per-view became instantly more appealing to the casual fan, and I think it instantly became more financially successful for the UFC. So this was a big move. And listen, it took a lot to get it done. It's a long trip over here to Fight Island, and then you gotta quarantine for 48 hours. The window to get this thing done, to make it a reality, was so narrow. But they scrambled and they pulled it off, and I think it's going to end up proving a big win for them.
Let's take the audience a little bit behind the curtain, because you've been tracking all this, on your live going blog. And let me tell you, I was telling you off the air, some of those pictures are a little jarring, seeing people in basically hazmat suits, the way you're having to get tested. I found it interesting, the fact they give you the option of the nasal or the throat. I found it interesting that you had to wait extra time to get your bracelet to even leave the room. This whole system, and while it's important, it's a little bit, it's a little bit like it takes you back, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty wild, and I definitely do encourage people to go check it out at MMA Junkie. We've got this ongoing blog. We're going to keep it going all week. A lot of behind-the-scenes pictures to see what they're doing. It's really wild. I was in Florida for the UFC's return to action, and I saw all the safeguards there. I live in Las Vegas, so I've been attending the events that they've been doing at the UFC Apex. But here in Abu Dhabi, in partnership with the government, what they're doing is next level, and it's thorough. It is encouraging to see how seriously they're taking the whole system. But it's wild, and it does make you realize, the kind of challenges that are going to be in place for other team sports that are trying to get back in the United States right now. But, it's a wild system. Being forced into quarantine for 48 hours and not allowed out of your room. They were great. The hotel staff was amazing. They'd bring us anything we needed, but, they're making it very clear you can't step outside. And then even once you reach that 48-hour limit, you've got to get this wristband from them, and everywhere we go, we're wristbanded. They check for the wristband. Any building we walk into, they ask us to sanitize our hands. They're taking temp checks at every single door. I mean, it's nonstop, checks and balances inside the safe zone. So it's really amazing to see what the UFC and the government of Abu Dhabi, partner together to do. But it's next level stuff, man. It's something like out of a science fiction movie.
Now, I got to ask you, John, one of the conversations we were having yesterday was about the fact that baseball seems to be the one sport that can't get their testing straightened out right because, while baseball is waiting 72 plus hours for a test to come back, you're getting your test pretty efficiently. So tell us, how long does it take for you to get your test back? And then what's the process when you get the test back?
Yeah, it's wild. I've been reading those headlines as well. I'm surprised. I don't understand what system they're using because, we've been getting tested. I've been tested at this point 13 times in total, and 3 in association with this trip. 1 before I was allowed to get on the plane to Abu Dhabi, and then 2 once we landed during that 48-hour quarantine. But, the test results, honestly, are only taking about 8 hours or so to get back. And then, we're informed that the result is negative, and that's when we can move on to the next step. So, obviously I'm no expert on baseball and their operations, but I was a little bit surprising because I can tell you that the UFC, both in Florida, in Las Vegas, and now here in Abu Dhabi, they are getting mass-scale test results back in 8 hours or so. So, not sure what's going on there. Obviously, Major League Baseball has a ton of financial resources and experts available as well. So I don't understand why they're struggling so much, if I'm being honest.
John Morgan joining us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline on 97.3 ESPN. I encourage you to follow him on Twitter, MMA Junkie John. He's doing full-blown coverage of what it's like over there on Fight Island in Abu Dhabi. And, John, speaking of Fight Island Abu Dhabi, what are the fighters telling you about their experiences out there? How do they feel about how everything's being handled? Because obviously, it's one thing for someone like you, you're just covering everything. You're trying to keep up. But the fighters are the ones that actually have to go out there and perform.
Yeah, it's funny. Before we got on the phone, we were doing an interview with Max Holloway, the former UFC featherweight champion, who's trying to gain his title back in the rematch. And he said, and he actually appeared in front of us in a mask, and he said, listen, I'm super thankful for all the safeguards that are being taken place here. He's like, I have a young son at home, and I want him to remain safe. I don't want to get sick. I don't want any of my loved ones to get sick. He says, so I really do appreciate all the steps that are in place. It's the protocol is a little bit jarring. Nobody's used to it. I mean, the testing, it isn't too bad. I definitely prefer the throat swab over the nasal swab. I'll tell you that right now. But it's not bad. But they're appreciative of it. I mean, the quarantine's a little tough, the mandatory 48-hour quarantine, because you want to get in, you want to get a little workout in, get used to the environment, start cutting a little weight. So that's kind of made them change in the way they're approaching everything. But everybody we've talked to so far has said, hey, listen, we appreciate, the steps that the UFC is taking to keep us all safe. And sure, it may be a little bit inconvenient, but we understand that not only is this keeping us safe, but it's allowing us to work. And I think the fighters are appreciative that they're able to compete, able to do what they love, and able to go collect a paycheck and put food on the table for their family.
You mentioned Max Holloway. I was a little shocked by some of his plans for how he was preparing for this, and it kind of gave me a mini flashback to the whole Mike Perry situation with his own preparation. So can you explain to the audience a little bit about what Max is doing and why he's been preparing the way he has?
Yeah, it was wild. I mean, listen, there's some people that think he might be playing a little bit of mind games here. Maybe he's trying to trick people a little bit. But at least if you listen to him, he said, listen, I did all my training sessions over Zoom with my coaches. I did the entire training camp by myself, which, as you alluded to, Mike Perry recently said the same thing. And we all kind of wondered, well, how can he do that? And then he went out and had a fantastic performance against Mickey Gall. So we were kind of joking with Max Holloway today. And he said, yeah, maybe I've got that same thing going. Mike Perry actually didn't have any coaches. He had his girlfriend in the corner. Max said he actually inquired if he could have his son in his corner and was told he couldn't because he was too young to be licensed for the corner. But, yeah, Max is saying, listen, I prepared this thing pretty much by myself, just talking to my coaches via Zoom and doing it with no sparring partners, no training partners. But he did say, listen, I know this is atypical, but don't forget, I've been fighting my whole life. I've been doing this for 13, 14 years. I know how to get myself ready. I know how to fight. And this allowed me to actually kind of heal up a little bit, focus on my health. And I still feel like I'm going to be, 100% ready to go.
Now, the other title fight on the card, Peter Yan versus Jose Aldo for the vacant 135-pound belt. something that I've talked to you and talked to other people about previously about this fight is, we know Aldo had trouble in the past cutting down the 145. Now you're asking him not just to cut down the 135. He's done it once before, but now you're asking him to be the champion. And then the champion match has even more restrictions on the fight weight cut. So, talk about the perspective on that fight between Jan and Aldo.
I'm anxious to see Jose Aldo tomorrow. I have not seen him in person yet to see how he looks. Seen some pictures, seen some social media, but anxious to see how he looks because you're right. This is not an easy cut for him, and he's got to be 135, not 136. You don't get that 1 pound allowance when you're fighting for the title. I don't know. In the interviews he's been doing ahead of time, he says, my body is responding very well. I don't think it's going to be an issue. I'm right on track. But it is concerning, especially when you're fighting a guy like Peter Yan, who's kind of this young, hungry, up-and-coming, aggressive, ferocious striker. So stylistically, this fight could be a lot of fun. But step number one is for Jose Aldo to make weight. And then as we're talking about, this pandemic-era MMA, everybody's having to make adjustments in what they do in their routines and how they handle things. So, is that going to impact his ability to make weight? Fingers crossed it won't. I mean, he doesn't have a history of missing weight, but it does concern you a little bit.
Now, John, if you could explain to the audience, because you showed the picture on your ongoing blog over at MMA Junkie, the picture of the octagon outside, but as you mentioned in the blog, they're not fighting in the outside octagon because it's too hot outside, which I think is a little ironic in and of itself. So talk about what are they actually fighting in? What is that environment like in that little arena?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think I didn't realize how many people that don't follow the sport closely just assumed that the fights were going to be on the beach, in this
John,
octagon.
all of them assumed it. Just admit it.
It's so true. There were so many people, and the dream of that, the idea that's pretty fun. But there is an octagon out on the beach here, but it's basically for show. It's for promos and pictures. And yes, fighters can go train in there if they want to. That's what's been said. But it is hot outside. I mean, it doesn't matter what time you go outside. I mean, even in the middle of the night at midnight, you go out there and it feels like temperature with the humidity is like 100 degrees. But because not only is it hot here, but it's incredibly humid as well. So, I mean, it would be physically impossible to fight outside. So there is an octagon on the beach, but that's not where they'll be competing. There's a place called the Flash Forum. It's a little building that's been used for like concerts and things like that before. We haven't gotten in there to see the setup. I just got out of quarantine a few hours ago, so I'm anxious to go see what the building looks like because that's not where the fights have been before when we were here. But that building is air conditioned. It's a structure that's been here, so it's not like they'll be struggling at the last second like they did last year in September to cool it down. So I think it's going to be a pretty comfortable environment for the fighters. But we'll see because I'm telling you, if the air conditioning is not working fantastic, places get hot here very, very quick.
John, before I let you go, just give the audience a rundown of what the schedule looks like this week with the fighters and the weigh-ins and the scheduling. Because I know out there you guys are going off of the East Coast time parameters, so it's a huge difference when it comes to daytime versus nighttime in the schedule for the weigh-ins.
Yeah, that's right. So I mean, listen, if you're a fight fan, you're a UFC fan, you can stick to your traditional schedule, kind of what you're expecting. So our weigh-ins will be Friday night at 5 p.m. local. But that's 9 a.m. Eastern on the East Coast. So that's the same time that the official weigh-ins normally take place. And then same thing for the fights. The fights on Saturday night will kick off at 6 p.m. Eastern for the prelims and 10 p.m. Eastern for the main card on pay-per-view, which means like 2 a.m. for us. So it's going to be a very, very early morning, Sunday morning for us. But for the fans back home in the States, it'll be normal times. And important to note, too, this is certainly the crown jewel of the stretch out here, 251, the big pay-per-view. But the following Wednesday, there's a fight night. The following Saturday, there's a fight night. And then the Saturday after that, there's another fight night. So there's 4 events here in basically a 15-day stretch. So a lot of UFC action coming to you over the next couple of weeks. And
people can follow all the news of everything that's going on at MMA Junkie. John Morgan joined us here. He's entrenched. He's on the ground. He's going through all the procedures. And he joined us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. John, I appreciate the time. I know you got a busy week ahead of you, so best luck to you, and hope you get to at least enjoy some of the festivities. At least you're enjoying the food, right? You got that going for you.
That's it. Well, hey, I'm having my first meal outside of my room, so I'm just enjoying not being in my room anymore, brother.
John, appreciate the time. Take care of yourself.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you, bro.
Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN. Again, check out that MMA Junkie ongoing blog because, he's got pictures. These people are wearing hazmat suits out there who are testing them before they're cleared to actually come out of the room. It's a wild situation out there on UFC Fight Island for UFC 251. And the rest of the month, as John mentioned, there's fights all month long for UFC, which is great for you sports gamblers out there. We've nailed a couple of bets thanks to some of the picks here on 97.3 ESPN. Haven't won them all, but we've nailed some big wins. So maybe some more opportunities this month for you sports gamblers who got the itch going without the main sports out there. All right, we'll get back to the text board, 609-403-0973. Begin on the conversation. Get to those next here on 97.3 ESPN FM and 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City. Welcome back into the warm-up. Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN. 609-403-0973. We'll be open talking about the Phillies. Dan from EHC chimed in a little earlier and said, I'm so confident in the Phillies because Harper's always gets off to a fast start. He can carry them to a 9-1 start. The other thing is the Phillies have a very veteran manager. All right, let's hit on both of those, Dan from EHC. I appreciate you chiming in. Number one, Harper getting off to a fast start doesn't guarantee the rest of the team will get off to a fast start. Just because Harper goes out there and bats 500 in the first 10 games with 5 homers and 12 RBIs is no guarantee the team actually goes 9-1. Because one, the rest of the team has to play well too. The other guys have to get on base ahead of Harper for him to get the RBIs to hit them in. And number two, the pitching staff has to at least keep the other team from scoring enough runs for you to actually win. My issue, Danny HT, is that I don't know what we're getting from the rest of this Phillies team. Now, you mentioned the veteran manager. That I will give you. I think that Girardi is very, very well equipped to put the Phillies in position to be successful. And they do open against the Marlins. And then they get the Yankees early on. So maybe there is an opportunity for the Phillies to get off to a hot start because of the manager, because of Harper. But like I said, to me, this is a 60-game season. You can't go on any extensive losing streaks. You can't have a guy go 0 for 30 and hope that he turns it around later in the season. There's so many variables that go into the Phillies' success, Danny HT, and I think that you're right. The Phillies have a veteran manager who will put them in the best position to be successful, but it's on the players to execute. And I know it's not, cool and trendy to talk about all the time, but listen, it's on the players to put up or shut up. So when you think about it, the Phillies still have to go out there and be successful. And I'm concerned that outside of Nola, Wheeler, Arrieta, Harper, and Realmuto, what the rest of the team is going to do. I don't know what version of Didi Gregorius we're going to get. I don't know if the guys ahead of Harper are going to get on base consistently. By the way, do we know yet, is it going to be Realmuto ahead or behind Harper? That could have a huge impact on how this team plays. Who are the players who are going to lead off? If Kingery's not ready to start the year, how does that impact the lineup? If McCutchen isn't ready to start the year, how does that impact the lineup? If Logan Forsythe is starting X number of games at second base instead of Kingery, how do you feel about the lineup then? Not saying Forsythe is a bum, but listen, he's not exactly Scott Kingery. Scott Kingery's a pretty darn good baseball player when he's all and up ready to go. Other times, it's Logan Forsythe or Neil Walker. I'm not exactly, jumping and clapping about that. 609-403-0973 is the text board. I know that Mike Gill, Hunter Brody, and more Phillies talk about coming up on the Sports Bash. Frank Close with his Tuesday segment on the Phillies. Matt Klintak spoke today. Not very long, but he did address some different things. So I know the guys will be talking about that as well. Andrew DeCecco, football at 4. And I think I saw Broads pull out a White Claw. So I think it's on. Mike Gill is trying the White Claw today. This specific flavor. Broads, grab that mic for a second. I got to ask you about this White Claw. Because you and Mike have been talking about this White Claw stuff for weeks now. And I got a couple questions of my own. Number one, what makes this flavor that you brought special?
I was just shocked when I first had it. I didn't really know what to expect. I saw lemon. I was like, I don't know how I feel about it. I was just really pleasantly surprised. Here's my issue, though. It was freezing cold when I took it out my fridge. Now it's just kind of cold. By the time Gil tries it, I mean, imagine having a lemonade that's not, nice and fresh and cold. He's going to totally rip this thing apart, and I know it.
Now, how did you ever get into the White Claw real quick? Like, is there like a history behind this, or was it?
It's just the fad, I was like, wow, everybody's trying this. What is this? And then I tried it. I'm like, oh, this is why everybody's doing it. It's phenomenal.
So what you're basically saying is that you're a follower and you're not a trendsetter.
No, I mean, it's very reasonable to want to understand why everyone loves it so much. There's a reason why everyone loves it. It's phenomenal. It's not like people are doing this because it stinks.
Sure about that?
Yes.
You positive?
Very positive.
All right. Well, we'll find out what Mike Gill thinks of the White Claw lemon flavor next, comparing it to lemonade. I'll let Mike Gill judge that. I don't know if I trust Hunter Birdie's taste buds.